12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast, episode 75. I am your host, Kenneth L. Watson Jr. On a Saturday, NFL playoffs is going on. The Chargers is playing tonight. So after this interview, I will be checking them out. Some updates as far as things going on with 12 Faces of Sober. February, I will be speaking at St. Cloud State University, where I received both my bachelor's and master's degree. So stay tuned to that as far as the dates and the time. So hopefully those that are in the surrounding area will be able to come out and hear me do my first public speaking event in regards to 12 Faces of Sober. But enough of me. You can go on 12facessober.com. You can shop the merch. You can get a nice hoodie like this and a variety of t-shirts, sweatpants, beanies, things like that. So like I said, we'd love the support, as well as you can get a signed copy of 12 Faces of Sober. If you don't want to get a signed copy of 12 Faces of Sober, you can also go on Amazon and just type in 12 Faces of Sober or Kenneth L. Watson Jr., and you should be able to find the book 12 Faces of Sober, which became a bestseller on Amazon February 22nd of 2022. And I have another book coming out right before the baseball season. It's about me playing baseball as a kid. So I'm looking forward to finishing that one and getting that out in publication. So enough of all that. Like I said, today's guest is Flindt. He runs PAIN, which stands for Parents and Addicts in Need. It's a nonprofit. He also has a podcast, Don't Hide the Scars. And let me tell you, the podcast is amazing. He had at least one guest that I've had on my show, which is really good. You know, we're starting to, people are starting to collaborate together and, being seen on various podcasts, which to me is amazing because we all have good stories. And but enough of me talking. Like I said, Flindt, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time. Happy New Year to you. And we'll go ahead and jump right into the interview.
You got it, Kenneth. Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I love what you do, brother. I love what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how life was growing up, and then, when did, your poison become a problem? We'll say it that way.
Okay. All right. Well, it's definitely a poison. That's for sure. Actually, I think you're going to find this amazing. It actually started the day I was born. And the reason why I say that is that I was, first of all, I'm 100 years old now. I'm like everybody's grandfather, but I had an ailment I was born with that caused me to have a surgery a year from the time I was born to the time I was 13. Then I had 4 more in 1976. I've had 23, I think, combined just on that one issue alone. But I've had 35 surgeries combined just during the course of my life. So my opioid receptors were, to say the least, messed up from day one. And so it was, and again, when I was a kid, I don't remember much, from when I was born till I was, 7 or 8. But, and where this problem was, it was very traumatic, to say the least, and so there was a lot of trauma there. I remember one time sitting in the hospital room. I was, like I said, maybe 7, and and they didn't do this on purpose, to be mean, but it's like they strapped my arms down. They had to tie me down. They had to tie my feet down, my arms, because I had so many IVs coming out of me. They just didn't want the IVs to come out. But when you're 7 years old and you're sitting in a hospital room and you're there for a month, and your parents aren't there at night, and you're by yourself, that can be pretty traumatic for a kid. And so as I kind of progressed into junior high, when I was 12, I actually got drunk for the first time. And and that seems to be pretty much everybody's kind of age group, where they start.
Because
right.
I ain't gonna say that wasn't the year that was the first time I got drunk. I was 12, but I can recall drinking when I was about 4 or 5 months old, But yeah, that definitely seems to be the norm, which is rather interesting. It's how are you able to even have the mindset to want to experiment, especially with something that is really toxic,
Yeah, and plus it doesn't even taste that good.
Exactly.
So it's right, especially at 12 and 13. It's not like you're drinking scotch because you know the different scotches that are out there, and you enjoy the flavor. So yeah, that 12-year-old bracket really seems to be kind of strange. But Kenneth, I was, and I don't say this with any arrogance at all, but I was one of those guys that I call myself a man of many talents and a master of none. I played all three sports in junior high and high school. I was in the music department. I was in student government. I was doing all of these things. But on the other side of the coin, I'm hanging out on the street with my boys, right, smoking pot, and doing a little cocaine, early on. And that was all through my high school years. And then, of course, as I progressed into college, and I had a couple more surgeries, and that's when it really took off. That's really when the my love for opioids went to its height. And so with that, again, it was just in college, but sure, I was drinking in college. I was using cocaine in college. I was using opiates in college. All the above, and wound up just getting in a whole bunch of trouble because of it.
And you mentioned that, like that sounds like a very powerful cocktail. Needless to say, I mean, you have the opiates, you got cocaine, you got marijuana and alcohol. I'm not gonna say you did all of them at the same time, but just the fact that, like, wow, like that's truly in experimentation.
It's beyond experimentation, right? Yeah. Yeah. And there were times when I didn't do all of them at one time, but I certainly did all of them at different times,
Right.
But it's interesting because my opioid receptors were changed so much that love, that actual love for the opiate was my nemesis. It just was. It was my nemesis. It was something that it's like I'm still fortunate. I'm married to the same woman. It'd be 44 years in July. But in essence, what I was doing is I had a love affair with that opiate. And when you think about it, that I was having an affair on her. Because that came first.
Yeah. You spending more time with that than your spouse. That makes sense. Wow. So now, I guess, to me, because like this is definitely a first in terms of saying that, like, you were prescribed this stuff at a young age, and then it carried on into your adult life, and now seeing that, okay, you had the doctors writing the prescriptions early in age. What was the difference? I mean, I know you had a rare condition. Now, did it become more of a more frequent visit to the doctors once you became, you started to abuse it?
Yeah, most definitely. And people got to remember now, this is back in, say, when it really started to take off was about 1984. And in those days, they were still kind of on the verge of not really prescribing a lot. But I had a couple of knee surgeries. And so I got prescribed them for the knee surgeries. But they were real lax on going ahead and giving you refills on those. So now you all of a sudden kind of fast forward to the early 90s. And that's when Purdue Pharma came into the picture originally. That's when they started telling physicians all over the country that people are not going to get addicted as much as you think they are. And to some degree, Purdue was even telling doctors they're not going to get addicted at all to OxyContin. And so with that, it was, I doctor shopped. And you got to keep in mind, pharmacies weren't connected, different pharmacies, doctors weren't connected. Nobody knew what you were doing. At one time, I had 13 different doctors' offices going at one time. So and I had maybe 4 or 5 pharmacies, and then I was forging prescriptions. I was stealing prescriptions out of the doctor's offices, forging their names. Because when you were taking as many as I was taking, those things just don't fall out of the sky, you know, and your insurance, if you have insurance like I did, they're not paying for every prescription that comes around.
Right.
So the amount of money that I spent on those things was phenomenal. Yeah.
And so like it's so now when you were actually, you know, I guess you could say beginning to like in the abusing stage, was it something that you were escaping? Because like I said, some people, you know, some people, like you said, are taking it for the pain. But, you know, was there an underlying issue that was, you know, making you take more? Like, you know, what was it that you know, the description of it to where it's like, okay, I need to have this. I need to have this to function. I need to have this for my day-to-day living. I need to have this if I'm going out to, you know, a function, to, you know, to interact with others, you know, like yeah, just let me know. Cause like I said, I'm not familiar. I mean, I've been prescribed opiates, you know, when I had my surgery for Achilles, you know, I tore my Achilles and I, you know, was prescribed it, but my mom told me not to take it because at that point I was abusing alcohol.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, I took one. My mom was like, but you can't drink. You can't drink. So it was like, this could, you know, this is what it could do to you. So it was more of, you know, because I was so deep into alcohol that she didn't want me to, you know, get into that. So like I never got addicted to it. If not, I could say it now. I sold it. I sold the pills because it was like, okay, I don't need it, but I need the money to go get some more alcohol. So
Sure.
I knew what I had to do to get, you know, get extra cash in my pocket.
You bet. Look, there's what do I call this here? I call it kind of a routine. You know, look, when you start using opiates like I did, you know, one can become dependent on that drug in as little as 2 weeks. And what I mean by dependent is that you are now physically dependent, physically addicted to that drug, but you're not in that drug addict state yet, you know. So if you stop taking them, you're going to feel lousy, so you take another one not to feel lousy, right? And that keeps building up. So look, I think behind the scenes here, yeah, there was a lot of angst for me because I didn't complete a lot of things. I didn't finish a lot of tasks. There were things I could have done in life that I just didn't take that extra step forward. So as long as I was taking that medication, I was reassuring myself I was okay. But then you reach a point where it's no longer even about that. One becomes so addicted to opiates that you literally, and I know you understand this, you literally have to take them every single day because they build up that tolerance in your body. They build it up to the point where, you know, the 2 turns into 4, the 4 turns into 8, the 8 turns into 16, the 16 eventually turns into 30, and upwards and upwards and upwards. And now the race is on, right? I mean, I live in California. I live in Central California. I used to tell my family I had to go to LA and work, and I would drive to Tijuana, Mexico.
Yeah, I know all about it.
Right?
I partied in the late 90s. I partied in Tijuana. I know all about it.
You bet. So, but I'd go down there and I'd put a 9mm behind my pants and I'd walk across the border and I'd start buying everything I could find. And then I'd walk back across the border, not caring if I got caught, didn't care if I got in a gunfight, didn't care about anything, because I had to have the drug. And when you don't have it, you go into panic mode, big time panic mode. And so again, it's just a race. It's a rat race. You know, I call it the hamster on the wheel. You know, you're just that hamster running on that wheel inside that cage, and you're not going anywhere. And so as that dependency builds, as the addiction builds, all the addict behavior comes along with it. You know, the stealing, the lying, the manipulating, the cheating, all of it comes into play here. And I went to 3 different treatment centers, and I walked out of all 3 of them thinking I had this thing made. And within 2 weeks I was back using again. Mm. I was in a rat race, Kenneth, that I didn't know or think I could ever get out of, to be honest with you.
And you said something that really stood out to me, is taking those risks. Like when you're heavy into addiction, you really don't care. You don't care about your freedom, you don't care about your life, and you're faced with some very, very tricky situations that you may not, you know what I'm saying? Just imagine, because I can speak from, well, I didn't get arrested, but my brother's friends, they got arrested in Tijuana. Right. And they, they're a little bit different in terms of their jails compared to America.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that, and thank you for sharing, because the honesty is what's gonna gravitate the audience as far as those that watch us. And it's interesting because it doesn't matter if it is a prescription pill, it doesn't matter if it's a drug or if it's alcohol, is that we lose focus really truly within ourselves, because you don't know. I mean, what was the time frame that you was going down to Tijuana?
Oh, this has got to be, 95 to 99.
That was the heart of the drug cartel war.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and I was partying, like I said, I started partying in Tijuana in 95, and I was like only 16 years old. Right. And I was partying as an adult from 97 to 2000 until I left California. So, and I didn't know until I'm watching documentaries now in my 40s and like, wait a minute, you telling me the El Chapo and the Arellano Felix brothers, because I shouldn't say this, but some of those guys, the Felix brothers offspring, was going to my high school in San Diego. And so it's like, to think about it, heck, they was, my junior high school in the early 90s got busted for LSD. How is that possible that 12 and 13-year-olds is over here pushing these type of drugs in a middle school? But now we see that today. We see those same problems, fentanyl being a problem in it's mixed in with candy and, looks like candy and stuff like that. They're still taking those risks.
Right. Yeah. Risks are something that we have to do. Mm-hmm. It's look, opiate addicts in particular, I think drug addicts, all of us, there's one major reason why we don't get clean. Mm. And that is simply, we don't want to go through the withdrawal symptoms. Mm. The withdrawal symptoms are as brutal as anything out there. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called The Basketball Diaries. Have you ever seen that movie?
Sounds familiar.
Wow. That is with Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Wahlberg when they were younger. Okay. And it's a true story about 4 guys in New York that went to a Catholic high school and played on a basketball team. And all 4 of these guys became heroin addicts. Mm. And Leonardo DiCaprio does a couple of scenes in there where he's going through withdrawals from heroin. You got to remember something. These pills, they're nothing more than heroin in a pill form. That's all it is. When you watch that and you watch those withdrawal symptoms, think of me, think of any other opiate addict out there that tried to do it cold turkey, because that's exactly what it is like. Mm. And it's ugly. Okay. So that's the main reason why we don't get clean. The other one is, and it's not because we're a bunch of wimps, it scares us to death. Mm. That like we were talking off air about, about that affair, right? With that you have, or maybe we were on air, but we were talking about that affair that I had with my wife. This is a major lifestyle thing you're in with this. This is an affair. This is your life. Look, I had my own business. I had a legal support service business at the time, where we're serving summons and complaints, subpoenas, doing investigations, doing daily court filings for hundreds of law firms. Mm. Think about this. I had to somehow, because in the last 2 years of my using, I was taking upwards of 70 to 80 Vicodin every day. I had 2 jobs. I had to make sure I got those pills every day, or I'm going into withdrawal. And I also had to get my job done. So I had 2 things going on. But that's the lengths we will go to. It talks about in AA, the lengths we'll go to get clean and to get sober. But think about the lengths we go to keep our high going.
Yeah,
we'll take it all the way to the end of the earth, man, if we have
to. That's a very, very, very true statement. Yeah, very, very true. That's interesting. That's interesting. But the amount, like the amount that you just mentioned of 70, like, I don't know what is it a thing where it's more of a body mass tolerance? Because I'm thinking, like, if you're taking that type of, I mean, at some point, I mean, unless you're popping so many per hour or whatever, but like that to me sounds like OD status. Like, I mean, that's rather close to it.
Well, first of all, let me say this: nobody starts out taking that much, and that doesn't happen. That's not in the first 2, 3, 4 years of your using. Okay, opiates build up a tolerance in our system, so we actually have to take more and more to obtain that high that we want, and we're not necessarily getting that high. We're taking them just to feel normal. I mean, just to feel normal. So an example would be this. I would have 10 7.5 milligram Vicodin underneath my bed, right, in between the mattress and the box spring. And I'd reach in there because I'm married at this point, and I got kids, the whole deal. And I'd take 10 to start my day. Just right off the bat. That's to stop the shaking, stop the sweat, stop the diarrhea, all of it that I know is coming in just a few minutes. Now, once that hits 20 minutes later, I'm okay. I'm fine. In fact, it gives you a little bump. It gives you a little excitement. Okay, now I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's start the day here. Well, by 10 o'clock, oh boy, I'm starting to come off of those. So now I'm popping 6, 7 more of those things. By 2 o'clock, I'm dropping more. By 5:30, I'm dropping more. By 10 o'clock, more. And all of a sudden, you look back and you went, holy Moses, I just went through 70 of those bad boys.
In a day.
In a day, right?
Now, wow.
Now with that, right? With that, and that amount, I was, and again, this is towards the end of my using. I had a heart attack in 2000. So because my smoking and the sugar intake that we use as opiate addicts. So I had a heart attack in 2000. I had open heart surgery the day after I had the heart attack. And of course, that gives me a more of an excuse to talk to another doctor about giving me more drugs.
Oh yeah,
right. So, but at that point, Kenneth, I weighed 140 pounds. I couldn't fit my 13-year-old's pair of jeans. I was losing teeth. I couldn't sign my name to a piece of paper. I looked like death on a cracker.
Wow.
And still no one are telling people I don't got a problem. I thought I looked good. I thought I had that heroin chic thing going on. Okay. But in essence, it looked like I had cancer. It was, I did not have long for this world back in 2000. Yeah.
Not, and at any point, like, did any of those doctors, like, I mean, I know you had a variety. Like, I mean, you said you were able to get your hands on prescriptions. Did any of those doctors like say, hey, like if they did blood work, did they say like, all right, yeah, there's a little bit too much of it in your system?
Ever.
Interesting.
Never. Again, you have to keep in mind during the 90s and then the 2000s with Purdue and Oxy and all of that, that stuff just didn't happen. Every now and then I'd get a doctor that would go, no, you came in too soon, so I can't write you the script. Well, I'd have to go down the street to the next guy and lie to him about something, you know. I mean, it was just a constant lie after lie after lie. But I'm going to give you just a little example here of the amount, so you get a picture of that. So I'm in my last treatment center in 2001. I was, like I said, I weighed 140 pounds. I was a train wreck. My best friend finds me and says, okay, you're coming to my house and I'm getting you into treatment. So he flies me down to the Betty Ford Center. I'm sitting in the Betty Ford Center. They detox me. It's about my 12th, 13th day down there. And I decide to call home. Yeah. Now, during those days when I didn't know what to do with the empty pill bottles, I would put them in a 33-gallon garbage bag and I'd throw them up in the rafters in my garage because I didn't want anybody to see the empty bottles in the garbage cans. Right? Okay. So I'm down in treatment. I call home. My wife didn't want anything to do with me at that point. I'd been kicked out. I don't even know why I called home. And she said, and my wife is not, she doesn't swear. Okay. She said, we found all your effing pill bottles. And I went, and I just, a lump just went right into my stomach. They had gotten up in the rafters to clean some stuff out, and 4 33-gallon garbage bags stuffed with empty pain pill bottles they pulled down out of those rafters.
Wow.
Yeah, there was something we figured out later. There's probably between 7,000 and 8,000 bottles sitting in those bags.
That's,
you know, I mean, who does that, right? I mean, who does that? Addicts do.
Dang. So, all right. So now, when you went to the Betty Ford, I've heard of that and everything. Now was that the only time you went, or was this like, series of stints in rehab?
Yeah, I had a series of them. I had been to 3 previous before Betty Ford. But when my best friend had me in his office and he said, I'll never forget what he said. He said, Kathy, your wife, he said, Kathy doesn't want you anymore. He said, hell, even I don't want you anymore. He said, but I'm going to help you one more time. And sitting there within myself, there was this silent thank you that came out of me, because I knew that I didn't have much time left. And when he flew me down there and walked me in the front door, because at that point I had lost it all. I mean, I had lost it all financially, spiritually, everything. He wrote the check for $26,000. That was, and said, I love you. If you ever wind up using again or in the hospital due to your drug abuse, he said, I will never, ever talk to you again. He goes, do you get that? I said, yeah, I got it. And I turned around and he said, I love you. I turned around, I walked in, and that was it. And I got clean at that point.
That's good.
And the reason why I say clean and not sober is, in my opinion, they're 2 separate things. A lot of people think sober is getting off of alcohol, and getting clean is getting off of drugs. In my opinion only, alcohol is a drug. So you get clean from alcohol and drugs. When you are sober, that means to me that you are living that good, productive, joyous life, non-perfect, but living that productive life. You're a good citizen. You're a good person. You've made your amends. That's sober to me. That's sober to me. And again, not everybody goes with that, but that's for me.
And and I definitely want to commend you because, you know, I can just imagine. I mean, I know the struggles that I went through with alcohol, and I could just imagine, what pain pills can do to a person. And I'm glad that, you made it through, because there are a lot of people out there that's not here today to live to tell that story.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I
And
do.
and I think that, like I said, it's definitely, you had an extra guardian angel looking out for you. You know what I'm saying? And and like I said, and it kind of, it brings us to now. It's like, okay, what are you doing now that's voicing, okay, what's going on?
Okay.
I know I witnessed it, but what are some things you got going on as far as like today that you're spreading the awareness of your past?
Right. First of all, let me say this: if fentanyl were around when I was using, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Mhm.
It's just that simple. So what I did back in 2008, that friend that sent me to treatment, who happens to be my best friend, I said, listen, man, I said, I got to do something here. I waited 7 years. I think there's a lot of people in recovery today within that year period that they want to go out and save the world, and they want to go speak at all this and do all that, right? And my suggestion to them is sit back, wait a bit, all right? See where your higher power's taking you, see what road you want to go down. Because if, and again, no judgment here, but if you're out preaching sobriety, if you're out talking about this and telling everybody your story and how good you are, and on and on and on, and you have a relapse, that's going to damage some people.
Right.
Again, I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just saying everybody needs to be careful when they do this, because let's face facts: recovery rates in the United States are 7%. It is not good.
Right.
So I waited 7 years, talked to my best friend. I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to go out and tell my story a little bit. He said, great, let's do it. So I go out and I tell it. And all of a sudden, so we formed this organization, PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need. And look, man, starting a nonprofit's a pain in the butt. I'll just be honest with you. And the first 4 years were really kind of rough. But all of a sudden we just took off, because what we do a number of things here. One of them is we provide family support groups for addicts of all different drugs, and just for the families. We've had that now since 2010, which we've seen over 8,000 families here in the Fresno area since 2010. I've done interventions over the years. Obviously, you mentioned our podcast to spread the awareness about opioid use in general. I work with one of our assemblymen here in the state of California to get laws changed in California now. I work with DEA. I work with Homeland. I work with our district attorney's office in just getting the awareness piece out there on fentanyl and other opioids. I also have a sober living facility that we've had for, I think, 7 years now. And then I own a treatment facility on the for-profit side with a partner of mine who's her name's Thelma Wilson. She's a lady from LA. She's just great. She's got 30 years of sobriety, man. She's just the coolest thing on two legs. But I want to talk, if you don't mind me talking about this a little bit, this awareness piece on fentanyl.